we have to accept now that health is the mainstream, or it's very nearly the mainstream because of government initiatives and also consumer effort to be healthier. But a lot of the food products that we see, food and drink products, are still presented in those sort of paler colorways, the beiges, even the light blues. And we know at MMR that this actually has an effect on the perceived quality of the eating experience. And therefore, there is a big, I think, a very call to action for manufacturers to rethink how we present healthier food to the consumer. We can frame it differently and create a much better perception of in the consumption experience, and therefore maybe attach a premium to that. I think the other aspect I would add is, I think, we know that consumers are moving now beyond natural in food. Natural was not the end game. It's now nutrition and nourishment. A lot of data we've had recently showing that consumers' new heading is nourishment. So how do you convey nourishment in your product? What tiny details, what sensory cues can you deploy to convince the consumer that you've got that sorted? So, for example, it might be the density of the product. It might be that the consumer can see small particulates which aids the absorption of the nutritional value of the food, for example. So it's working with manufacturers to understand what can cue more nourishing, not just natural. So I think in order to succeed in the health space, we have to accept that if we're a big player, that somehow we've got to reach not only what we call the mindful nourishers, so the people who are more conscious about their diets. And these, we know, tend to be older, actually. 50% of our mindful nourishers are over 55. But we also need to embrace what we would call the hedonists. So about a third of the population, we estimate, is a hedonist, and they prioritize taste and convenience. But we need to get the hedonists eating more healthily, because how are we going to tackle the obesity crisis? So what manufacturers need to do more of is, I think, emphasize what is in the product. So, for example, if they claim reduced salt, reduced sugar, reduced fat, we believe that you alienate your mindful nourishers, because you only serve to remind them that the food is processed. And you have to do anything you can these days to move away from this idea of processed. And then for the hedonists, if you talk about less this, that, and the other, it really jars on taste, and they are going to shy away and continue to eat the full fat. So the industry needs to really focus on the more. And I know it's not in the health space, but I observed recently, the Kit Kat advert. They actually reduced sugar by 13%, but they don't tell you that. They tell you that it's got now more milk and more cocoa, which is true, but they didn't tell you about what they'd reduced. And that's an analogy that I think a lot of manufacturers can take hold of. And as I said earlier, they need to present it more vibrantly and not in light blue colours.